two major hirings in the NFL. The Raiders have hired a new coach, and the Dallas Cowboys have hired a new coach. And in some ways, I don't even like acknowledging that the Raiders are in Las Vegas, because being from the Bay Area as a 49ers fan, I followed the Raiders too. I didn't root for the Raiders, but it was cool having an NFC team and an AFC team here. And the Raiders should, if they're not in Oakland, they should at the very least be in the state of California, playing in Los Angeles, not the Chargers. But the Raiders have been through many hard years, and they were formerly known as the team of the decades. They had great success in the 60s, the 70s, and the 80s. But they've become really an embarrassment. Bad management, bad coaching, not enough talent. And they hired Pete Carroll. On one hand, I really understand the hire, because the Raiders need someone that brings them credibility, someone with a track record, someone who is respected. And you have all that in Pete Carroll. Someone who's done it, someone who's won it all, who's been to the Super Bowl multiple times, and you get that in Pete Carroll. What I don't understand is he's not a long-term solution, being the age he is. You're still going to have to look for an eventual successor, a replacement for Pete Carroll. But the main problem with the Raiders is not just the coach. They have been lacking a franchise quarterback since Rich Gannon. I mean, if you're really being honest, since the days of Rich Gannon wasn't a long-term solution either. He had some very good years, including an MVP season for the Raiders, but he was a journeyman quarterback, a veteran quarterback who found success with John Gruden, Tim Brown, and Jerry Rice going to the Raiders. Since then, they've struggled through the years of Jamarcus Russell. They had Carson Palmer, but they've never had that quarterback to consistently win. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo last year, I mean, we could just go through the list of all the problems the Raiders have had at the quarterback position since Rich Gannon. But just look at the division that the Raiders are in. The AFC West is, I will now say, the most talented division in the AFC, and they have great coaches from top to bottom. I mean, Chiefs, they're a dynasty. Andy Reid is out on the Mount Rushmore of NFL head coaches. I would go with Lombardi, Belichick, Shula, and Reid. How could you not have him in there at this point between his Super Bowl appearances, Super Bowl victories, all-time regular season wins? He's one of the greats. Then there's Sean Payton, who's won a Super Bowl. It's been a while, but between having him as a head coach and it looks like the talent of Bo Nix, the Broncos appear to be in the right direction. And then the Chargers, you're going to win with Jim Harbaugh. Can you win it all with Jim Harbaugh? That's still in question. But Jim Harbaugh is just a winner. College, professional, NFL. Jim Harbaugh wins, and I'm very aware of the strengths and weaknesses of Jim Harbaugh. Now, Pete Carroll enters the division. I mean, when can you come up with a time when there was that many great head coaches in just one division? That's hard. I mean, I would probably say around 1990 or so, where you would go to the NFC East with Joe Gibbs, Jimmy Johnson, and Bill Parcells. That's amazing. So it's going to be a very hard task, but again, I would like to see the Raiders be a good team again. But who will be the quarterback? I mean, the Raiders have just done this for so many years. Veteran quarterbacks, going back to Jeff Hostetler. That's when I started watching the NFL. It was Jeff Hostetler. And then all these quarterbacks that they tried, and so many veteran quarterbacks. And they got burned with Jamarcus Russell, no doubt about it. And they've been trying to get veteran quarterbacks with some success, and they really hadn't had any real success besides Rich Gannon, any consistent success. And then there's the Dallas Cowboys. Wow. They hired Brian Schottenheimer as their head coach, who was the offensive coordinator. So he got promoted from being OC to head coach. And this one is quite a head scratcher, because you think about the history of the Cowboys. The last time they have been to and won a Super Bowl was 1995. They haven't even reached the conference championship game since 1995, yet we talk about this team more than anyone in the NFL. And I have great respect for the Cowboys. They're the 49ers rival, but I have great respect for what they've done historically with their coaches. Think of Landry, Jimmy Johnson, the quarterbacks. You could make a strong argument that there have been more great players over the years to suit up for the Cowboys than anyone. I mean, I'd include, when you're including teams like the Steelers and the Packers and the 49ers and even the Raiders, I'd say there are probably more great Dallas Cowboys than any other franchise yet for about 29 years. Well, it is 29 years, nearly 30 years. They've been an embarrassment in a different way, that they have not been able to get to a Super Bowl, and that they're hyped up every year as the most important team, America's team. Yet, if you're just talking about getting to a Super Bowl, they now have one of the longest droughts in the NFL. Very few teams have not reached a Super Bowl or even a conference championship game during that time. And the Cowboys have gone through so many head coaches. I mean, especially if you throw out the expansion teams, throw out the teams like the Jaguars and the Browns returning and the Texans. The Cowboys have one of the longest championship Super Bowl droughts in the NFL. The head coaches they've gone through since Jimmy Johnson and Barry Switzer, I mean, most recently, an old Bill Parcells, Jason Garrett, and Mike McCarthy. And I don't understand parting ways with Mike McCarthy in order to hire Brian Schottenheimer when no other team was even interviewing him. I mean, who wanted him? This is just a very underwhelming, unexciting, very conservative hire. I just didn't even think he was even in consideration. I mean, you know that Mike McCarthy is respected around the league and by his players. And now you go to Brian Schottenheimer. The Cowboys have really taken a step back with coaching between now McCarthy parting with the Cowboys and then the loss of Dan Quinn. The Cowboys will remain in the news. They will be what they always are. They'll have the headlines. They'll be competitive. But a move like this will keep them where they are. like I said, they'll be in the playoff hunt, but they will not be a serious Super Bowl contender.